Bleach is a story filled to the brim with a ton of thematic meanings and undertones, but none are as important and all-encompassing as what we got in the final episode of the first season of Bleach 1000-Year Blood War. Tomohisa Taguchi and his Bleach team deliver a thrilling, satisfying, and deeply personal season finale for the ages, overflowing with plot twists, reveals, and character development. I have a lot to say about this episode and Bleach as a whole, so I hope you give me the opportunity to entertain you for the next few minutes. I'm going to backtrack to the end of episode 12 just to make this flow seamlessly. Ishin has just told Ichigo everything he needs to know concerning his family's history and the implications of the past, including Yhwach's involvement in the death of his mother. After their conversation, Ichigo thanks his father and is picked up right outside his home and sent back to the Soul King's palace. He is then placed in the Asauchi pit again, and this time, he has a completely different look in his eyes. Now, the unique thing about this Asauchi pit is that Nemaya's intent is to have the Asauchi deem you worthy, which can be interpreted as you overcoming them, which is what Renji did. Renji fought them and eventually overpowered them. Ichigo could not, and that result translated to the Asauchi did not choose you. I want to dwell on that for just a moment, because it can be quite confusing to think about. The reason the Asauchi were mad and angry at Renji and Ichigo is because of the way they viewed their Zanpakuto. They were crying tears of sorrow, but they were hateful at the same time. That is why they fought against Renji and Ichigo. The reason for the fighting is because the Asauchi feel hatred towards Renji and Ichigo's use of their Zanpakuto. But once Ichigo returns, something stunning happens. All the Asauchi bend down on one knee and bow to Ichigo. They no longer bear any hatred or anger towards Ichigo. They give themselves completely up to Ichigo so that he may find the one among them that is to be his Zanpakuto. Ichigo walks by most of them and arrives at a specific Asauchi. He reaches out his hand and the Asauchi takes hold of his hand, shedding his black posterior and turning white. And this is only the beginning. Nemaya takes Ichigo down to his forging pit and has his bodyguards prepare the forge. He takes off his glasses, grips his hammer, and begins to hammer down on the Asauchi. Strike after strike after strike, the sparks fly off each hit and Ichigo watches him silently. As Nemaya is working, he starts to talk to Ichigo, asking him if he noticed his Asauchi turn white after touching him. He tells Ichigo that his hollow is his real Zanpakuto, much to Ichigo's surprise. Ichigo then begins to put two and two together as Taguchi's storyboard leads us into Ichigo's inner world for a confrontation with the one we thought was Old Man Zangetsu. To my genuine surprise, Taguchi paints the skies of Ichigo's world in magenta, just like he did in the opening. Seeing that threw me off. It genuinely did, because I've been tolerating the magenta, not loving it, only tolerating it. But to see it be doused into Ichigo's inner world felt a bit too much. Regardless, as I watched this on the Twitch livestream, the chat just continued to tell me to press on. Let him cook, they said. Alright then, let's see what Taguchi does. Spoiler alert, he starts cooking. The entire sky is painted magenta, yes, but all the color in the scene other than the magenta pink is removed. It's completely devoid of any color not magenta. As Ichigo stares at Old Man Zangetsu, Nemaya tells him to take a closer look at him, and the camera pans in slowly and creepily towards Old Man Zangetsu until we see him for who he truly is. Ichigo's Quincy embodiment taking on the visage of Yhwach from 1000 years ago. Ichigo has a look of complete shock on his face, being met with the truth that the one he trusted many times over with his life was lying to him this whole time. And what is a stunning shot, Taguchi has the camera start from high above, it then sinks down below behind Ichigo, past him, and zooms swiftly into Zangetsu's face. At this point, I'm beginning to enjoy the direction here. Ichigo screams out Zangetsu's name and Zangetsu rejects that name, thrusting Ichigo's heart into disarray, and rain begins to immediately pour down from above. The one positive I'll say about the magenta skies is that because of its color, the rain that falls doesn't look clear. In fact, it looks like black to red raindrops, as if it were blood falling down from above. That gives the scene a unique edge that I do appreciate. As the rain falls, The skyscrapers that inhabit Ichigo's world are also broken into pieces as the entire world descends beneath the water. Now that we're submerged underneath the waves, Taguchi takes away all the color and goes full on black and white for this conversation. That is something I actually do appreciate, because it's a step down from the black and white nature of Kubo's manga pages. Not only that, the colors of the scene are also telling a developing story, but more on that later. Ichigo begins to question Zangetsu for answers as he descends deeper into the ocean of water. We are blessed with many beautiful shots of the building debris falling, broken pieces of Ichigo's heart. The sun still shines above the water, but in this black and white reality, it feels more like an ominous moon than it does a bright sun of hope. Taguchi places Ichigo and Zangetsu into two holes created by the fallen buildings, visually telling you about the rift that is forming between these two individuals. The shattered glasses from the skyscrapers are floating next to each of them, forming mirrors for them. Each shot feels deliberately orchestrated and storyboarded. Meanwhile, Old Man Zangetsu explains that he is the embodiment of Ichigo's Quincy power, one that did not want him to become a Soul Reaper. He did not want Ichigo to walk down the path of a Soul Reaper because it would mean that he put himself in danger. It would mean that his heart might be broken and his spirit shattered. He would ally himself with the Soul Reapers and would eventually have to fight against the real Yhwach, a battle Zangetsu does not believe Ichigo could win. He then suppressed Ichigo's actual Zanpakuto, White, and became the center of his spirit energy. He summons a Reishi blade and confesses to Ichigo that he had a change of heart. He found himself actually wanting to support Ichigo. He would see Ichigo fail, fall, and succumb to despair, but Ichigo would pick up the broken pieces and persevere on. Seeing Ichigo continue to move forward despite his trauma caused his heart to waver, and now he feels confident and happy stepping aside so that Ichigo can assume the power he was always meant to have. Old Man Zangetsu starts to fade away and leaves behind a black-colored tear in this monochrome sea, along with a blue sword floating in the waters. He beckons Ichigo to take hold of his true sword, the true Zangetsu. Ichigo is then overcome by a blinding flash of light, a light that restores color to this black and white world. Ichigo then begins to make his way towards the surface, jumping on the very buildings that represented the fractured heart broken by dishonesty and lies. Those very buildings become stepping stones for Ichigo to reach towards the surface. The descent into the monochrome waters felt heavy and full of despair, but his journey up towards the surface feels light and full of hope. Ichigo thanks Old Man Zangetsu for using his Quincy powers to stop his bleeding, for using his Quincy shadow to save him, and for giving him power when he was weak. Old Man Zangetsu himself did not feel worthy to be Ichigo's power. Ichigo is the one that makes that decision for him, accepting both him and White as Zangetsu. He reaches towards the brightly colored skies and hurls his hands into the fire. Nimaya beckons him to pour his soul into the forge and pull his blade out. Hashimoto's water and fire effects take over as Ichigo evaporates the entire ocean of water and can now be seen wielding his two Zanpakuto. He takes a look at them and places them together, speaking to each of his Zanpakuto spirits. To Old Man Zangetsu, he thanks and lets him know that he will no longer ask him to lend him power. Old Man Zangetsu's blade begins to fade into blue particles. And then to White, he lets him know that he will no longer ask him to get out of his way anymore. White's blade also begins to fade into bright red particles. Ichigo then tells them, "I will not even say that we should fight together." The blue and red particles combine and turn into a bright gold color as both White and Old Man Zangetsu stand next to Ichigo. "I will fight for myself, because you are me. The blade is me." You know, that was amazing. That was truly amazing. In this episode of Bleach, Kubo is asking you, the viewer, what is the proper way of viewing the Zanpakuto? Through the life of Ichigo, Kubo is asking you how to view the trauma, how to relate to the dishonesty, the pain, the anguish, and the dashed dreams of the past. Why Ichigo's existence is born from Aizen Sosuke's insistent desire for power. Old Man Zangetsu's Quincy progenitor is responsible for the death of Ichigo's mother. Ichigo himself has been put through so much pain and hardship because of the lack of balance that exists within himself, something we can all relate to, one way or another. We cannot hope to attain balance and peace in the world beyond us if the world within us is chaotic and at war with one another. Ichigo no longer views the Zanpakuto as tools that need to be overcome or subjugated. The true essence of Zanpakuto mastery is the understanding that you and the blade are one. They are born from you, and Ichigo now fully understands that truth. It's the culmination of Ichigo's triumph over the trauma of losing his mother and hating the fact that he had a demon inside him trying to overcome him. There was no fighting necessary. Ichigo did not throw a punch or need to swing a sword. That is because what needed to happen in that moment was a conversation. Understanding needed to happen, and Ichigo listened to what Old Man Zangetsu had to say. He shut his mouth and he listened. He allowed himself to understand what Old Man Zangetsu was thinking and feeling, and then he forgave him, attaining true inner peace and rising to the pinnacle of power in the Bleach universe, becoming a true Soul Reaper elite, worthy of the praise and the highest honors. For what this episode does for Ichigo as a character, the manner in which it goes about expanding his growth, the thematic messaging and story implications, The Blade is Me remains the single most important moment in the entire Bleach mythos, and for good reason. One of my absolute favorite episodes of all time, and rightly so. Thank you Kubo, thank you Taguchi, and thank you Studio Peiro. Like, comment, and subscribe. This is your boy Rebirth, signing out. Peace.